Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the Yoton YM07. This is a budget MP3 player that sells for only 30 bucks. So even though this product category has been mostly replaced by our smartphones, being able to also play music, if you're looking for a dedicated device just to use for going to the gym, something more compact and small, this might be an interesting option. That being said, it's definitely not quite as advanced when it comes to the audio performance versus some of the hi-fi DAPs or digital audio players that we've seen recently from brands like Hi-Fi Walker that have more premium components, including the DAC or digital to analog converter chip, really cater towards audiophiles that want to squeeze out as much detail as possible. Instead, this thing likely has a similar DAC as on existing smartphones. You're not necessarily getting higher quality music playback, though you do have a standard 3.5mm headphone jack. It's primarily designed as just a low-cost backup player, again, instead of being necessarily hi-fi grade. Still, for $30, there seems to be a decent value, at least on paper, including access to a 2.4-inch capacitive touchscreen, perhaps reminiscent of a iPod Nano or a miniaturized iPod Touch, and the player comes with 16 gigs of built-in system storage that you can further augment using a micro SD card. Additional 64GB card is also included in the box, so 80GB combined are included for the $30, which is not bad. You can even use this micro SD card for other purposes if you wanted to, and it has a design that also reminds me of maybe a small phone, which is super compact and cute. Here's also a quick size comparison with some of those aforementioned players from X2O as well as Hi-Fi Walker here side by side. Really is a card size player, but keep in mind that some of the components, including the, again, DAC chip inside, is also going to be more entry level. The rear also houses a built-in loudspeaker, so you can play back some sound without even connecting to headphones with a standard 3.5mm jack, and it also has built-in Bluetooth, so you can connect to wireless headphones and speakers as well. Even the build quality feels a little bit more premium than expected for a $30 player, crafted out of glass on the front and the rear, along with a aluminum alloy frame. So it's not built out of plastic, actually has a surprising density to it. That being said, this is not running on Android or really any smart operating system, giving you just access to music playback as well as some photo, video playback, and a built-in FM radio function is also found if you plug in headphones to act as the antenna. The player even comes with built-in voice recorder function as well with a microphone. Furthermore, it is using Bluetooth 5.0, so it's relatively up to date in terms of that chip. Connecting to wireless buds shouldn't be too problematic when it comes to latency. It is just a plug-and-play device, no drivers are required, compatible with pretty much any OS, whether it's Windows, Mac, Chrome OS, so on and so forth. You can just drag and drop files over like a thumb drive. Some other accessories that you get include a user guide in addition to a standard USB Type-C charge and data sync cable. By the way, the 800 mAh capacity battery is rated for roughly 8 hours of continuous music listening and can be charged up in around 2 hours. There's also a pair of bundled 3.5mm headphones, but again, if you want slightly higher quality sound, you should probably plug in your own headset. Now, although this player does feel pretty sleek and well constructed, again, you don't really get a case or a clip as part of its hardware. So it's small enough to slide easily into pockets, but if you did want a clip to attach onto a shirt, for example, they have another model which is a little bit more compact as well and even more cost effective at only around $25, but you don't get a touchscreen on this particular model. It still comes with built-in Bluetooth though, so if you prefer the tactility of physical buttons to a touchscreen, that would be the model to consider. Anyways, there is a lock screen here to prevent any accidental triggers when it's in your pocket. For instance, you have to swipe up to unlock. I would say the UI is definitely inspired by iOS in terms of its icons. Although some of these widgets are interactive in terms of play, pause, and skip tracks, it is actually functional and you are able to control your music without jumping into the full music app per se. You can also check out the battery percentage remaining here, as well as time and date information, along with the ability to jump into the video player, photo player, sound recorder, FM radio, and there's also a theme changer, which is really just adjusting the wallpaper here to become a little bit more colorful. We have 3 different background images there, but you can't really add your own, it looks like. There's that black one here, which is more minimalist style versus slightly more colorful. And there's going to be a file manager, and then this one here is kind of a folder that contains connectivity for Bluetooth. A couple of utility functions also include a basic calculator can also be found. This is a home button here down below, which is also touch sensitive, and you can find a simple stopwatch as well as an alarm clock can also be set up on here as well. Again, using the built-in loudspeaker, it can function even without headphones being connected. There's even a simple text reader They call it an ebook reader, but keep in mind that because of the more limited screen size, as well as the fact that it's not really an e-ink panel, it's just a backup function if you want to throw some memos into the player for emergency contacts or things like that. Otherwise, if we jump into more advanced settings, we have various languages that you can change the UI to be displayed in, and right now the screen is already at 100% maximum brightness. I wouldn't say it's the brightest screen if you are in outdoor direct sunlight. It might be a little bit more challenging since it is not fully laminated, and also it seems to be a TN panel, meaning if you are tilting it at more significant angles, you can see how the colors can wash out a little bit more compared to slightly more premium IPS displays. So unfortunately, it's an area where they cut on some of the costs to hit a lower price point, but it is what it is. At the very least, it is relatively responsive to navigate, and you can also change the timeout settings as well as set up a screensaver, which can be a digital clock. A sleep timer can also be found, so after X hours of playback, it will turn off automatically as you drift into sleep. You can also check out any memory here that is remaining in both the internal storage as well as the SD card. Overall, the touchscreen, again, responsiveness is not bad. It's just that the screen is significantly smaller compared to our modern-day phones, that it takes a little bit of hunting and pecking to get used to, versus in the early 2010s where our phones were also much smaller to begin with. Now, when it comes to music playback, music is categorized by internal versus the SD card, further categorized by the typical playlist, genre, as well as artist information as well. And to their credit, file format support seems to be decent when it comes to audio recordings. That is, it supports the regular MP3, WMA, and even FLAC lossless resolution tracks can be played back here as well. Some of the UI elements are a little bit small, but you can also favorite the track, as well as change through a couple of other EQ options. For example, if you want to crank up some of the frequency spectrums here, influencing the sound signature, as well as going to some presets, including rock, funk, hip-hop, jazz, classical, techno. And I appreciate the fact that the player does have dedicated volume rockers, making it a little easier to navigate, even if it is playing there in your pocket, to make the volume there higher or lower, as well as to lock the screen. That being said, scrubbing between parts of the track is a little bit more hit or miss, just because, again, the touchscreen is quite small. It can function given a little bit of practice, but it is something that takes some acclimation to get used to, and you also find the typical play, pause, as well as skip track commands down below here. That being said, it seems like cover art information is also a little bit hit or miss. You have to really play around with some of the metadata information to get it to show up, unlike some of those hi-fi players that we checked out previously that seem to be recognized immediately, which seems to work a little bit better with some of the cover art info. Just keep that in mind. Overall functional though, when it comes to the volume output, it was loud enough, clear enough without too much distortion. Although the quality isn't going to differ wildly from a mobile phone, it's still an enjoyable enough listening experience, all things considered. That is definitely the highlight of this player though, being music first, because some of the other attributes, including video, for example, is quite picky when it comes to file format support. It does not recognize the standard MP4 files, for instance, so only videos encoded in AVI or AMV file formats can be read by the player. That being said, since the screen here is so small, it may not matter quite as much if you're primarily just using it for music, but still something to keep in mind. I think the file format should at least include MP4, perhaps in the next revision. And in terms of pictures, thankfully here it does at least support JPEG images, so if we tap on an image, you can tell it's going to kind of load in there line by line, so the processor is by no means the fastest, or maybe the OS optimization, but at least here you can use it as a very small image viewer. The FM radio, though, thankfully does seem to work decently. Again, as long as you have headphones plugged in to act as the antenna. There is auto-scanning functionality to find the strongest signals. Not bad if you're trying to listen to the news or discover some new music. And you can also find FM recording function as well that will save some of the recordings onto the built-in memory for you to listen back to. Also, to serve as a quick reference, here is what the built-in loudspeaker sounds like. Keeping in mind the size of the player, it's reasonable, but obviously for better quality, you would want to plug in your own headphones via the 3.5mm analog jack, or you can use wireless Bluetooth headphones. Keep in mind though that it's relying on standard Bluetooth codecs of SBC and AAC, as opposed to supporting higher-end codecs like aptX or LDAC. For a $30 player, though, I would say it's mostly expected. You can also loop the tracks as well as shuffle them based on your preferences. Now, also jumping into a quick look at the voice recorder quality next. So now we are recording using the built-in microphones, test, 1, 2, 3. And in terms of other settings here, you can also change the recording format from WAV to MP3, as well as under additional settings, you can save the recordings onto the default memory or onto the SD card, as well as change the bit rate of the recording, aka the quality as well. So as a pocket voice recorder, that could be another application to consider on a player like this. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Yoton YM07. As we touched on earlier, MP3 players are no longer as popular of a category as they once were, but if you're still looking for kind of an iPod alternative, something small, bring it with you without worrying about it breaking because of how inexpensive and lightweight it is, it's not that bad as just a simple music player when it comes to still being able to support most music file formats. That being said, areas where it might be a little bit more disappointing would be the file format support for videos, but again, on a smaller device like this, perhaps it's not a deal breaker, as well as the fact that, again, with a smaller screen, some of the controls might be a bit more fiddly since we've been conditioned to use larger displays. But all in all, again, not bad in terms of value for all the various features that you get in here, as long as you don't expect it to be the highest end player when it comes to the DAC as well as components inside, but still getting by with loud and pleasant enough for simple music playback. So you can check out more details if you are interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That has been the basic but pretty well built Yoton MP3 player, the YM07.